Some major breaking news to tell you about. U.S. intelligence officials tell the Canadian government that the passenger plane that crashed in Iran was, quote, highly likely shot down. They believe it was accidental. All 176 people aboard the flight from Tehran to Kyiv were killed. 63 Canadians are among the victims. The plane went down just hours after Iran fired missiles at U.S. military bases in neighboring Iraq. CBC's Defense and Foreign Policy Specialist Murray Brewster joins me now from Ottawa with more on this developing story. And Murray, first of all, why are the Americans sharing this information now, do you think?
Well, the Americans have in possession of the perhaps greatest intelligence network in the world in terms of satellites and aircraft and even foreign intelligence services on the ground. So they have a vast amount of information, and they would have no doubt been focusing very, very closely on Iran at this time. So they would have been in possession of a great deal of data and information, and they would be sharing it with Canadians naturally. But it's best to describe it, Andrew, saying that that Canada is a net importer of intelligence from the United States. We have our own capabilities, but they're not as vast as the Americans. So the Americans are constantly sharing this kind of information with us.
And how would the Americans have gathered this intelligence?
Well, there's a whole variety of systems, like satellites as an example. That would be the first thing. We would naturally expect the Americans to have been focused like a laser on all of the air defense systems within Iran at the time, because as we know, the missile strikes had just happened. There were high tensions. It is it's pretty evident that they would have had the missile batteries throughout Iran already sighted by satellite. So that's one of the ways that they would have been able to gather the intelligence through satellite and pre-positioning of where Iranian military assets might have been. The other way would be that around this time, the Americans have AWACS, which are those surveillance aircraft that have the domes on them that would be tracking aircraft movements, but they also can spot missile movements as well and missile firings. So they would be perhaps able to see the heat signatures of missiles, and they would have been able to perhaps even capture it in real time. There are some other capabilities that they would use. Potentially they could be listening through signal intelligence, as an example. Now, Canada has its own electronic eavesdropping system in CSE, but the Americans have the NSA. Now, in this kind of circumstance, what potentially could have happened would have been that the Americans would have seen the missile launch, and they would have been able to pick up at least some kind of signal intelligence afterwards from the missile battery crew. Again, none of this has been proven. Iran is denying that one of its missiles shot down the airliner, but these are some of the ways that the Americans could have put this puzzle together.
And reports describe a specific missile. What do you think the significance of that is?
Well, this is the most intriguing part for me, because they're describing the Tor M1 missile. Now, that is one of the most advanced missile systems in the world. It is meant specifically to target aircraft flying at lower altitudes. Now, and at the time, the Ukrainian airliner was flying at a reasonably low altitude. It had just taken off. And again, this is just speculation. But it fires small rockets with very small warheads. And this is significant. They explode in proximity to the aircraft. They don't hit the aircraft exactly. And by exploding near the aircraft and sending fragments perhaps into the wing or to the engine, it could have caused the fire that reports say was seen as the aircraft was making its way around and trying to turn back. Because, Andrew, there's a big difference between the Malaysian airline jet that was shot down over eastern Ukraine and this, because that aircraft exploded in the air. The reports that we have been receiving is that the aircraft tried to turn around. So the missile, this is a very significant piece of the puzzle here.
And so talk to us about that. Why would the aircraft try to have turned around, do you think, or do we know?
Well, potentially, what could have happened was that perhaps one of these missile batteries or missiles exploded near the aircraft. It damaged it. The pilot realized it. They would have lost communications. They would have suffered some kind of damage. And there are reports that the plane was turning around and trying to make its way back to Tehran, and when it went down. So that is significant. The other significant part about this missile is that it is a highly automated system. It is meant to find a target and then shoot at it automatically without very much human interface. Now, it's not AI, it's a little different, it's an automated system, but that's very significant, and that could play into why there's the suggestion that this was an accidental shooting down.
Murray, thank you. That is the CBC's Murray Brewster in Ottawa.